The night Kendrick Lamar walked off the 2026 Clio Awards stage, the applause hadn't yet faded before the whispers began. 2 wins, 2 music videos, 1 artist. But behind the shine of those golden trophies sat a controversy too complex to wrap in a press release, and too explosive to ignore. Because as media outlets rushed to crown Kendrick's back-to-back visuals revolutionary, a separate, much quieter legal process was already underway, and it threatened to unravel everything. It wasn't about plagiarism, it wasn't about licensing, it was about power. Specifically, who had it, who lost it, and what Kendrick may have had to give up to secure his latest legacy moment. The Clios celebrated 2 videos, Sermon at the Liquor Store and Muted Sundays, both praised for their minimalism, political weight, and sonic restraint. But it was the production credit on Muted Sundays, and the name that wasn't on it, that raised eyebrows across industry circles. Even casual fans noticed the absence. Solana Rowe, better known as SZA, had disappeared from the project entirely. Sources began to whisper, was she removed? Did she walk away? Or was something else, something contractual, buried under non-disclosure clauses and strategic silence? As the headlines rolled in, legal experts began circling one word: indemnification, and a clause that may have prevented one of R&B's most respected artists from even acknowledging she was part of the video's creation. Now, with Clio Gold in hand and the internet demanding answers, a complicated narrative is beginning to surface. One that involves unreleased footage, private settlement talks, and the kind of branding overstep that can stain even the most intentional artistry. Because beneath the trophies, there's a growing belief that something was scrubbed clean. And the court documents, they may prove it. At first, it was just a rumor. A brief comment buried in a Reddit AMA. A blurred screenshot of a treatment board with a pink sticky note labeled SRO-VO Pass. But in the world of high-level music marketing, rumors like that don't stay buried long. Within days of Kendrick Lamar's dual win at the 2026 Clio Awards, an unprecedented sweep for an artist in the branded content, music video, and short-form direction categories. A story began to form that turned the industry's most celebrated moment into a case study in artistic erasure. Muted Sundays, the more controversial of the 2 winning videos, was unlike anything Lamar had released before. Shot entirely in grayscale, the video unfolded over a single extended tracking shot of Kendrick walking past silent vignettes of grief, worship, and domestic labor. There were no lyrics, just a spoken-word meditation layered over ambient sound design. The narration, anonymous, but unmistakably feminine, haunting, familiar. And yet there was no credit, no name. That absence triggered fans with sharp ears and long memories. The voice, they claimed, belonged to SZA, Kendrick's longtime TDE collaborator and artistic foil. A vocal timbre so distinct it practically needed no confirmation. But when fans combed the Clio Awards press materials, official video metadata, and even label liner notes, SZA's name was nowhere to be found. Instead, the video's credits listed the voiceover artist as unknown per artist request, with creative direction attributed to PG Lang and post-production overseen by the boutique LA firm Godbody Pictures. The omission wasn't just confusing, it was conspicuous. Especially considering that in late 2025, just 4 months prior to the video's release, SZA had teased in an interview with Dazed that she and Kendrick had just wrapped something weird and special. That clip resurfaced fast. So did screenshots of an earlier Vimeo leak of Muted Sundays that briefly credited SRO in its raw title card before being pulled offline within 2 hours. From there, the conversation shifted from speculation to accusation. Music industry insiders whispered about a breakdown, not a personal one, but a professional one, involving usage rights, compensation, and artistic attribution. A rift, some said, that began not between Kendrick and SZA directly, but between their respective teams during negotiations with a major apparel brand that had co-funded the project's production in exchange for undisclosed product placement and shared narrative control. The brand, Maison Core, a Paris-based minimalist streetwear label known for its subtle logo placements and history of backing socially themed campaigns under the guise of artistic independence. According to sources close to the negotiation, MAISON Core had pushed for Muted Sundays to be released not just as a music video, but as part of a capsule campaign titled Narratives of Stillness, which would include installation screenings at Fashion Week events, limited edition merch, and branded soundscape downloads. The problem, insiders said, began when SZA's legal team asked a simple question: was her voice being used to sell clothing? The answer they got was evasive. Emails reviewed by Parallel Desk, a media outlet focused on entertainment law, allegedly show MAISON Core representatives describing the video as editorial-leaning and non-commercial adjacent, a classification that would allow the brand to bypass certain usage fee structures typically owed to talent. SZA's camp pushed back, requesting full usage breakdowns and clarification on whether her narration would be included in the soundscape downloads or any AI-generated translation tools the brand was rumored to be testing. That's when things got quiet. One attorney, speaking off the record, said the situation escalated when a licensing manager at MAISON Core responded with a memo suggesting that SZA's contribution, while immensely valuable, was non-integral to the audio-visual structure of the deliverable. In legal terms, she could be removed. What happened next is murky, but the consequences are not. SZA's vocals remained in the final cut, albeit altered slightly in pitch and reverb, but her name was stripped. Officially, she wasn't part of Muted Sundays. Unofficially, she was its soul. When the Clio nominations were announced and Muted Sundays was recognized for innovative use of sound and voiceover, legal blogs began picking apart the ethics of it. Could an artist's voice be used without credit if compensation had been provided? Was silence from the artist the same as consent? And most crucially, did a non-disclosure clause, if signed under pressure, prevent an artist from even acknowledging their own performance? That last question ignited a powder keg. Multiple former collaborators of MAISON Core came forward anonymously to share similar stories of contributions altered just enough to avoid credit, of contractual clauses that treated creative input as utility elements, not authorship. One even shared a redacted portion of a boilerplate agreement that defined vocal contributions under 30 seconds as ambient texture, not requiring accreditation. SZA's team, true to form, declined to comment, but her fans didn't. The hashtag Give SZA Her Credit trended for 48 hours following the Clio ceremony. TikTok creators began splicing Muted Sundays with SZA's old verses to prove the voice was hers. Fan edits added her name back into the video's title card. Within days, a viral Google Doc surfaced containing alleged timelines, email leaks, and pieced together voice samples to make the case that SZA was, at the very least, entitled to acknowledgement. But the story took an even stranger turn when an entertainment law firm based in New York quietly filed a motion to unseal arbitration documents between PG Lang and a third-party rights holder concerning creative licensing and misattributed authorship. Though heavily redacted, the documents referenced a voice contributor who was removed from the commercial version of the content due to contractual misalignment. Legal experts began weighing in. One article in Billboard Law Quarterly asked whether a new precedent was being set. One, where anonymous contributions might become a loophole to avoid royalty obligations in the age of branded audiovisuals. Another posited that Kendrick, while not directly at fault, may have been cornered into compliance by overlapping brand and label interests. If Kendrick had final edit and the brand had usage rights, he may have been placed in a position where protecting his collaborator meant torpedoing the entire campaign, wrote Amelia Rojas, a senior analyst at the Artists' Rights Legal Alliance. It's the kind of compromise you don't forgive, even if you understand it. And this tension didn't exist in a vacuum. It played against the backdrop of a year already fraught with similar cases. Megan Thee Stallion's dispute with a fragrance company over unauthorized choreography use. Tyler, the creator's quiet pullout from a footwear capsule due to colorway disagreements, and even a lawsuit involving a Rihanna voice sample in a cologne ad that was allegedly spliced using AI after usage was denied. The entertainment industry was already watching its definition of collaboration stretch and blur, and Kendrick, his silence remained deliberate, unbroken. He accepted his Clios with calm gratitude, thanking every creative who shaped this piece, whether visible or unseen. That one line became its own flashpoint. Was it a nod, a guilt-ridden deflection, or a coded apology? No one could say for certain, but the internet had already decided. Because in 2026, artistic omission isn't neutral, it's political. And in the case of Muted Sundays, the question had shifted from who created it to who was erased from it. As calls for clarity mounted, what began as a speculative whisper spiraled into legal motion. On April 2nd, a series of filings surfaced through the Southern District of New York's arbitration docket, quietly, without press or PR, but flagged almost immediately by music industry watchdogs. The case was listed as Roe versus P.G. Lang et al., but the parties were anonymized by request. What caught attention wasn't the names. It was the nature of the filings. Violation of implied moral rights, commercial misrepresentation, and most damning, suppression via brand indemnification. Legal experts knew what that meant. Someone had spoken and been silenced, under the weight of an agreement designed not to protect, but to erase. At the center of the filings was a single clause buried in the partnership contract between P.G. Lang and MAISON Corp., signed 5 months before Muted Sundays was released. Line 87 of that contract, disclosed in a heavily redacted exhibit, read, "All final creative output will be subject to non-reversible branding integrity standards, including unilateral removal of contested audio-visual elements deemed harmful to brand alignment." That clause wasn't standard. It wasn't normal. It was, as one attorney described, a nuclear option hidden in the fine print. It gave the brand, not Kendrick, not P.G. Lang, not the artist, final say over what stayed in the video. And if any contributor raised objections during the post-production window, the brand could simply remove the element and invoke an indemnification clause to protect itself from liability. In this case, the element in question wasn't a logo, a color correction, or a product. It was SZA's voice. According to insiders who spoke on Background, the problem didn't begin with the recording. That went smoothly. SZA reportedly recorded her voiceover in a single day at a boutique studio in Echo Park, working directly with Kendrick and the director. Everyone left the session thrilled. The rough cut was powerful, emotional, personal. The issue came weeks later, when MAISON Corps' marketing team proposed a rollout plan that reframed the video as the centerpiece of their spring campaign. Limited edition jackets would be released with QR codes linking to the video. Product pop-ups would be staged in major cities. A VR activation was planned for Milan. And most critically, all of these deliverables would feature the voice as an immersive narrative thread. That phrase was flagged immediately by SZA's reps. According to arbitration filings, her team argued that this violated not only the spirit of the collaboration, but specific terms in her standard licensing agreement, which required full creative context disclosure if her work was to be included in cross-promotional materials. More importantly, they requested her name not be attached to anything that blurred editorial performance with branded commerce. The arbitration documents revealed a chilling email exchange between P.G. Lang's legal counsel and the brand's media team. In it, P.G. Lang's lawyer reportedly attempted to renegotiate usage terms to ensure the voiceover remains within the original narrative intent and does not serve as a direct sales vehicle. The response from MAISON Corp. was blunt. As per contract, the brand retains authority to proceed without vocal attribution in the event of usage conflict. In simpler terms, if SZA didn't want her name on it, she wouldn't get it. But she also couldn't stop them from using the audio, edited, anonymized, altered just enough to exist in a legal gray zone. This led to what would later be described in internal industry memos as contractual ghosting, the practice of retroactively erasing credited contributors to maintain legal compliance while still benefiting from their work. The term gained traction rapidly, sparking panels at the Music Business Association and even an emergency ethics roundtable at SXSW that spring. Within days of the arbitration leaks, pressure mounted online. The Give SZA Her Credit hashtag returned, this time with sharper teeth. Screenshots from the arbitration filings went viral. Fans created side-by-side waveforms of SZA's speaking voice and the Muted Sundays narration, adding subtitle overlays like, "You can ghost a name, but not a frequency." Memes began referencing 87th clause energy. Even bootleg versions of the original video, allegedly featuring SZA's untouched vocal take, began to circulate through Discord servers and private Vimeo links. The brand, PG Lang, and Kendrick all remained silent, but one more document would break the story open. Leaked to the Rap Room, a music law newsletter, was a confidential settlement offer from MAISON Corp to SZA's legal team dated 2 weeks before the Clio nominations. It included a 5-figure payment labeled honorarium for experimental voice use, along with a non-disclosure clause prohibiting public comment for 24 months. SZA's team declined. This was no longer about money. It was about ownership. And that refusal is what reportedly froze PG Lang in place. Kendrick, caught between brand obligations and personal ethics, found himself cornered by two immovable truths: honoring a collaborator's voice and fulfilling a contract that had already gone to production. The source described it this way: "He didn't ghost her, the paperwork did." But in an industry where image is as much currency as legal protection, silence started to sound like complicity. Opinion pieces from Rolling Stone to The Intercept began challenging Kendrick's legacy. Not musically, no one questioned that, but philosophically. Had the artist who once challenged the industry from the inside now become a tool of its most insidious mechanisms? A line from his own past resurfaced. From Untitled 3, a deep cut, "What the black man say? Tell them we don't die, we multiply." Critics weaponized it against him. If your art multiplies, they asked, why erase the women who built it? In private circles, defenders pushed back. Kendrick had reportedly tried everything to mediate the fallout. Some said he'd offered to re-record the narration. Others said he'd tried to delay the campaign entirely. But under contract, under budget, and with Fashion Week deadlines looming, the release had been pushed forward with his hands tied. And then, finally, one unexpected ally spoke up. In an Instagram story later deleted, Dave Free, PG Lang's co-founder and Kendrick's closest creative partner, posted an image of a locked studio door with the caption, "Contracts got us all scared of each other." No names, no context, but the message was clear. Fear had shaped the silence. And in that silence, one of the most artistically daring music videos of the year had been compromised by something as mundane and monstrous as a usage clause. The Clio win didn't erase that. It illuminated it, because the award celebrated the final product, not what was taken out to get it there. 3 weeks after the Clio Awards, the silence cracked. Not from Kendrick, not directly, but from PG Lang's most unexpected move yet, a short film posted to their Vimeo channel titled Version 0. It appeared without promotion, without credits, and without warning. The caption read only, "Some stories start before the first draft." The 5-minute piece opened on a single shot. A woman's silhouette, seated in a vocal booth, face obscured by shadows and glass. Her voice, unmistakably SZA, flowed into the room, low, unedited, raw. The lines were familiar. They were the original narration from Muted Sundays, only this time delivered without ambient edits, without obfuscation. Her voice wasn't a background texture. It was the story. Midway through the video, static blurred the frame. The visuals collapsed into timestamps, timecodes, watermarks. Then, a title card, omitted in post, preserved in process. No branding, no logos, just silence and breath. It was an undeniable confirmation. Not just that SZA had voiced the project, but that she had owned its emotional backbone from the beginning. The internet reacted in waves. First shock, then vindication, then rage. Version 0 trended within the hour. Think pieces dropped across every major music outlet. Fader called it a buried truth surfaced through art. Vulture labeled it the most honest thing to emerge from a marketing scandal this decade. Within 24 hours, the original Muted Sundays video saw a 200% spike in downvotes and an organized campaign to boycott MAISON Corp's spring line. For Kendrick, the stakes shifted. He was no longer just caught between collaborator loyalty and brand obligation. He was now visibly complicit in an act that fans saw as betrayal. The man who'd long been hailed for platforming black women in his work was now being accused of standing silently while one was professionally erased. The next move had to come from him, and it did. at a surprise pop-up event in Compton, organized under the name Sightlines. Kendrick took the stage. No fanfare, no cameras, just audio recordings and 100 people packed into an empty community arts center. Eyewitness accounts said he stood in front of the mic for a full minute before speaking. Then, he said 3 words: "I got played." But what followed wasn't an attack or a defense. It was a kind of public confession. He explained, without naming SZA or MAISON Corps directly, that he'd agreed to terms he didn't fully vet. That he'd trusted the system, the handlers, the reps, the final pass that had come late at night when he was on the road. He admitted he'd seen the edited version 2 days before release, and by then, the deal was done. Pulling the video would have triggered a clause that passed liability from the brand back to him. "I thought I could fix it later," he told the crowd. "I thought the work would speak louder." But it hadn't. The apology was clipped and circulated. Some fans were moved. Others called it damage control. Still others pointed out what he hadn't said. Why SZA's voice had remained anonymous for so long. Why no credit had ever been restored. Why PG Lang continued to work with the same agencies even after everything came to light. And then SZA finally responded. In a long-form interview with Hype Maven, she broke her silence, carefully, pointedly, without theatrics. She confirmed she had written and recorded the voiceover for Muted Sundays in September 2025. She described the process as sacred, and her collaboration with Kendrick as fluid, beautiful, until it got sold. Her most telling line came halfway through the interview. "It was Kendrick who erased me. It was the contract that let someone else do it for him. But I also know when you don't fight hard enough, silence becomes agreement." She went on to say that while she didn't plan to sue, she had declined all settlement offers because you can't pay someone to accept being invisible. That quote was pulled by every outlet. The backlash hit MAISON Corps like a tidal wave. Influencers pulled brand deals. Billboard trucks circled their Soho flagship store with the phrase, "This is not a collab, it's a cover-up." A protest performance was staged in downtown LA, where indie artists re-recorded Muted Sundays using the full SZA voiceover and projected it onto the side of the PG Lang building. The movement wasn't just about one song anymore. It had become symbolic of everything hidden, polished, and silenced in the name of brand-safe storytelling. Meanwhile, internal chaos spread through PG Lang. An anonymous staffer leaked Slack screenshots from a project channel in which team members debated whether the video should be re-uploaded with full credits. One message read, "We either correct this now or spend 2 years explaining it later." Another, "Legal says re-uploading triggers brand breach, so we sit and bleed." The industry took notice. At a round-table event during Cannes Lions, several brand strategists called for a moratorium on ambiguous creative contracts, specifically citing the Muted Sundays fallout as a turning point in how talent negotiations must be handled going forward. One exec from a major beverage company even proposed the Row Clause, an unofficial term that would require all contributors to be notified before any attribution decisions are made or altered. And then came the final twist. Buried in an unrelated SEC filing, a line item appeared in MAISON Corps' Q2 disclosures. Loss associated with terminated creative IP license, $2. 4M analysts connected the dots quickly. The brand had been forced to pull the Muted Sundays video from its product campaign entirely. The licensing deal collapsed. The damages, quiet, corporate, and unseen, had landed exactly where SZA warned they would, in the budget. But for Kendrick, the cost was different, less measurable, deeper. He reportedly turned down a speaking slot at Harvard's Cultural Ethics Symposium, declined a brand integration that would have placed PG Lang alongside a major tech partner, even postponed his upcoming short film rollout, rumored to address artistic betrayal and consumer manipulation. In the aftermath, fans and critics alike began rewriting the Kendrick narrative, not erasing him, but complicating him. He wasn't the villain. He wasn't the victim. He was the case study. The example of what happens when the art gets too close to the money, when loyalty collides with liability, when brilliance bends under the weight of contractual silence. And in the center of it all, a voice, erased, but never truly gone. 3 months after Muted Sundays was pulled from MAISON Corps' capsule campaign, the reverberations had fully reached the center of the music and media industries. The controversy no longer lived in fan spaces or legal subreddits. It had matured into a point of serious debate on business panels, in artist boardrooms, and inside record label compliance teams. A quiet revolution was underway, built not on spectacle, but on precedent. At the center of that revolution was one sentence, echoed from panel to panel, contract to contract. You can't license what you silence. It was unofficially dubbed the Roe Principle. And by the beginning of Q4 2026, at least 7 major agencies, including PRG, GroupM, and Universal's in-house creative lab, had adopted preemptive contract language that addressed voice-based authorship and attribution. The shift was subtle, but industry-changing. Contributors, especially those offering voiceover or spoken word performances, were now explicitly granted creative acknowledgement protections, even in non-musical projects. One clause read, "Removal of audio contributions shall not result in removal of credit unless consented to in writing by the original contributor." It wasn't law, but it was loud. And it happened because one artist refused to accept silence as payment. SZA hadn't spoken again since her Hype Maven interview. Not in interviews, not on social media. Her page remained blank. No stories, no tweets, no features. For 90 days, her absence became its own quiet protest, one that drew more attention than any statement ever could. Fans began posting clips from her old interviews where she discussed creative integrity, artistic ownership, and the emotional toll of being minimized. One in particular gained traction. It was from a 2022 YouTube panel where she said, "Sometimes the hardest thing is knowing you weren't erased because you failed, you were erased because you were too powerful to control." The comment resurfaced with new meaning. So did the rumors. By October, word began circulating that SZA had quietly submitted an exhibit for Art Basel Miami. Not an album, not a music video, a multi-sensory installation. The official listing simply called it CTRL Alt Del, a sound redaction exhibit. Attendance for opening night was invite-only. But inside sources confirmed the experience she de-rewritten the rules of what it meant to leave. What began as a quietly redacted name in the credits of an award-winning short film became something much larger. A referendum on authorship, power, and the consequences of silence in an industry that often trades identity for branding. The Muted Sundays scandal wasn't just about a voice removed from a video. It was about the systems that made that removal possible, the contracts that protected it, and the reputations that were risked to speak the truth. Kendrick Lamar, an artist known for wielding narrative like a blade, found himself on the wrong side of a story, not by malice, but by the complexity of the industry he helped shape. SZA, forced into the margins, used absence as resistance and turned erasure into elevation. Together, their silence and their actions sparked a reckoning that's still unfolding across boardrooms, studios, and legal tables. Now, the question is yours. In an era where creativity is monetized at every level, who owns the truth of a story? When silence is contractually protected, how do we hold institutions accountable? And most importantly, when the credits roll, who decides who gets to be remembered? If this story made you think, share it. If it made you angry, talk about it. If it made you question the way your favorite art is made, you're not alone. Drop your thoughts in the comments. Was justice served? Or was the damage already done? What would you do if your voice was used but your name erased? This isn't just a case about 2 artists. It's about every artist who's ever been told their contribution was valuable, just not valuable enough to name. Subscribe for more stories like this and stay loud, because silence was never part of the deal.